Hi there, and welcome back to I Heal Kids, where we talk openly and compassionately about raising healthy, whole children in today's world. And I'm Dr. Ellie, and I'm really grateful you're here today. But before we dive into this episode, I want to take a moment to offer a gentle heads up. Today's conversation touches on sensitive, important topics related to sexuality, specifically how it shows up in childhood and how we, as the adults in their lives, can support our girls with understanding, safety, and trust. We'll be exploring this topic with great care, using developmentally appropriate language and keeping emotional and cultural weight of the subject matter in mind. But whether you're a parent, caregiver, educator, or simply someone who wants to better support the young people in your life, you are welcome in this space. My goal is to provide a grounding conversation that empowers you, not with fear, but with information, language, and perspective. So you can show up for your child in ways that feel authentic, protective, and loving. And if at any point something feels too heavy or brings up emotion for you, I invite you to take a break, take a breath, and come back when you're ready. You are not alone. And these conversations, while sometimes uncomfortable, are incredibly important. Okay, take a moment to get settled, maybe grab a cup of tea, take a walk with your earbuds, and let's begin. Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ellie, and I'm here with my pod, I Heal Kids. And if you don't know me, I am from Ireland, but I also have a podcast. My practice is Middle Path Integrative Pediatrics, and I practice in Asheville, North Carolina. So I treat kids 0 to 21 with holistic, natural, and also conventional healthcare. And I also do functional medicine for kiddos 2 to 102. So if you guys need that, then please reach out. And today I am super excited because we have a fun guest, Julia Considine Pierce, which I love your name. It's very Irish, both of them. Yes, we're so Irish together. We're Irish besties. I love it so much. And Julia is an author, and she's also an educator. She's an advocate, and she advocates for the health and wellness of women and girls. So, what could be better? She shared her expertise in the public school system, where she taught puberty and sexual education. And also, in addition to teaching health at the local community college, she did all of that together. Julia earned a Master of Public Health degree from UNC-Chapel Hill Gillings. Is it Gillings?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. School of Global Public Health. And her graduate research, you guys, was pretty cool. It was in collaboration with North Carolina Department of Public Instruction to determine the Healthful Living Essential Standards and how they're taught, which is amazing. Who teaches them, what resources are being used, and what additional support is needed. And all of this qualitative research, it basically examined all the health standards and it focused on reproductive health and safety, which is so amazing for women and girls. You know what? Guys and non-binary friends too, you're all included. Her research earned an Impact Award, wow, from UNC Graduate School, which acknowledges research that benefits the people of North Carolina. And I'm here because she has written her first children's book, you guys. My Body is Sacred, Tales of Health and Wellness for Little Girls. Oh, look at it. It's so
Yes.
beautiful. And it will be published in May, although I did see that you can pre-order.
Yes.
So I'm very excited. So welcome, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ellie. It is a delight to be here with you today and talk about the health of girls and women.
Oh, I'm so excited. So I was hoping that you could just start by sharing your personal health journey, or your personal journey rather. I always think health journey because that's my journey. And what inspired you to write My Body is Sacred, which is such amazing work, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains, and I was really inspired by the natural beauty of the mountains and the rivers and the gardens, and felt so connected to that feeling of the sacred in nature. And we attended the Catholic Church, and I also really loved the Catholic Church and the sense of family and community there. And then later in life, we went to the Unitarian Church. And so I was always so curious about that thread of unifying love and grace and compassion that I felt in all of those traditions, and curious about how that thread existed in other traditions as well. And then as a teenager, I really wanted to love my body and understand my body and feel connected to my spirit. And that seemed so complicated. It seemed like there were so many barriers to just being healthy and eating well and understanding how to exercise and take care of my nervous system. And so that really inspired me on a lifetime journey of trying to understand that thread of the sacred and also how that incorporates into my own health and well-being and how to really know my own body and love that incorporated with that sense of sacred. And then I ended up getting to do the Master of Public Health program. And my initial interest was actually in menstrual health education. So I was curious about if we incorporated mindfulness into menstrual health education, how is it that that could support the mental, emotional, and spiritual health of girls? And mindfulness is that real loving awareness, of our body, our feelings. It's accepting ourselves without pride or judgment. And mindfulness really orients us, and so you can be oriented towards self knowledge and a loving sense of self care and body positivity, which anchors you, your heart and your mind inside, or the opposite, which is really the status quo, is being self-conscious of your body during when puberty is starting, or starting your period, or feeling ashamed. And that really creates an anchoring outside of the body, and that you end up really self-objectifying yourself when you're not anchored within. And so we know from research that the self objectification can lead to body dissatisfaction because you're always comparing yourself, shame, increased anxiety and depression, disordered eating, lower self-esteem, all of these things. And so as I went on that journey, I ended up getting to intern with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. So I get to really see what was happening in the classroom. And that was an amazing opportunity to interview teachers and administrators across the state of North Carolina. And then lastly, I then was in the classroom and I got to teach puberty and reproductive health and safety in the school system. And I was so deeply inspired by the health standards for puberty education and just the profound health impact that that class can make in the lives of children across the lifespan. Puberty education is healthy relationships, healthy communication, staying safe, it's consent, it's anatomy and physiology, it's all the changes associated with puberty and media literacy and hygiene. And we know that when children get puberty education, that it really equips them with this accurate knowledge about their changing bodies. And it reduces information, misinformation, and the anxiety that comes along with that.
Mm-hmm.
We know that it fosters body confidence and reduces shame. And it also really is a key piece of dismantling the cycle of emotional and physical and sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And however, all the beauty in all of that and the safety and health promotion, only about 22% of schools actually across the United States actually teach puberty. And so this book actually began as a puberty education book and something that I could offer for families whose the schools that they're in don't teach puberty. But as I wrote, I couldn't figure out where to start with the health information. And so I realized, because every child and family may have a different level of information about the body. And so I realized I needed to pause on the puberty book and I needed to create a book for prepubescent girls that really covers that foundational health knowledge. So readers are on the same page before we talk about puberty. And so My Body is Sacred fills this gap in education for prepubescent girls. And as far as I can tell, it's the only book that also incorporates this message about the sacredness of the body and cultivating a relationship with the divine, however it is that your family defines that. And that was really one of my intentions with the book, was whether you're spiritual or religious or you just like walking in nature, that you can connect to this, the way that the stories are written, and this message of love and of the sacred.
Julia, I absolutely love all of that. And thank you so much for that information. I think many people may be surprised to know that actually part of integrative medicine is working with connecting to the spirit and having a spiritual connection. Now, that doesn't have to mean religion, but working on how we connect to our world, whether it's nature, whether it's, to your point, mindfulness technique, which some people may refer to as a relaxation technique, and all of these things. And I do agree there is a big gap between teaching girls about their bodies and what their body parts are, and then moving into puberty education. And sometimes I do, and I agree with you, I think that that education is helpful to have first before we move into what's happening with the menstrual cycle, because it's very difficult to understand if we don't know what our body parts are called. And I think it's so important for parents to use the book so that they have a really safe and healthy way for girls to understand what's going on. I actually have a personal story of a patient who I can't disclose any information about, but actually she had some very different genital anatomy, and she really wasn't aware of it at all until she came for a checkup in her teen years, and that had to be addressed much later on. And I wish that that would have been knowledge that she could have had at an earlier time. So it's like so important. So, how has your own experience with health education influenced the way that you address sensitive topics? Because I know sometimes there can be a bit of confusion between naming body parts and sexual education.
Yeah, great question. Great question. I really prioritize health. And by that, I mean that I separate health from adult ideas and emotions and experiences with sexuality. So the focus is health and safety only. Because you think about it, and many of the lessons that we teach our kids are about health and safety. We're like, have a balanced diet, exercise every day, don't talk to strangers, wear a helmet, all the things. But there's this one crucial part of health and safety that's often left out, and that's the medical terms for our private parts. And there's no shame in this because most of us did not receive this information as well. There was a recent survey in a hospital of adults, and they found that only 9% of those surveyed were able to correctly label the 7 parts of the vulva. And so one of the reasons that this cycle of disregard and sometimes shame and fear continues from generation to generation is that the vulva and the vagina are perceived only in relationship to sexuality.
Mhm.
And that's a complex and often emotionally charged adult subject. That's really important when you're an adult or, in the later teen years. But especially during adolescence, education about the vagina and the vulva really need to be separated from adult ideas about sexuality. Otherwise, we're always inhibiting that health and safety information. And, there was a CDC report in 2022 about preventing child sexual abuse, and they found that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys experienced child sexual abuse. And 20% of the victims were under the age of 8. And when we look at how to support kids, many pediatricians say that it's really important to teach children the medical terms of their private parts. And there's a pediatrician, Dr. Nina Agrawal in New York, who specializes in child abuse pediatrics. And she said, what we really need is a holistic approach to sexual health, where it's body safety and we're talking about private parts at from the beginning, that this is normalized and there's not that stigma and shame. And one of the expert reviewers for my book was also a child abuse pediatrician. And she said to me, it's really hard to stop a predator, but you can give a child a voice. And so education is not dangerous, but the lack of education is what can be dangerous. And so boys and girls, but this book is for girls, and I hope to be able to write one for boys. But girls really need a safe and sacred place to learn about their bodies and how to care for and protect and love their bodies, including the vulva and the vagina. Because as they get older, they're going to be constantly exposed to these sexualized messages about their bodies. And there are very few places that they can really access accurate and non-sexualized health information, and even fewer that really affirm the sacredness of the bodies. And so when we teach children the medical terms for the private parts, we know that they're more likely to be protected and they're more likely to be able to avoid abuse or be able to talk about it if it happens. And so when we don't use the correct names or no name at all, kids get the message that like something's wrong with that part of the body or we can't talk about it. And so it kind of gets veiled in secrecy and shame by not giving it a name and letting it be a normal part of health and safety. And so kids then can hear that maybe they get in trouble if they talk about their body, or if they may not feel safe to confide in an adult if someone touches them inappropriately. And so using made up names or no names can really shut down that vital communication for children. And sexual abusers, they really rely on secrets and silence. And so when we're really able to just communicate clearly and support our children with that education, it really supports confidence and understanding and just builds a sense of safety.
Yeah, I do think it's really important to be clear that in this book, we're talking about, body parts and the way that you might teach a child this is your arm, this is your finger, this is your nose, this is your vagina, this is your labia. And if we just keep that tone about it, then there is no sexual charge to it. And it is very helpful to your point, not only for protecting your children from these predators, it's also helpful for healthcare professionals because I, for sure, have seen children with all kinds of things going on in their genitalia that were not disclosed for
Mhm.
quite some time, anywhere from really gnarly fungal rashes to really painful cysts in the vagina to discharge that they didn't have to be dealing with. Sometimes just being able to give that child the voice to say, I'm having vaginal discharge, or, there's a cyst. It's kind of, I think there's this, bump that hurts like near my labia. That's very helpful for them to be able to just kind of communicate well with their pediatrician, their gynecologist, whoever they may be seeing. So it is so, so important for us to just know the names of our body parts and then take the, sexual health part maybe at a different time when it's more age appropriate and all of that. Yeah. So go ahead. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say that the if this information is new to you, or looking at a diagram of a vulva is new to you, or if you feel resistance, like that's totally okay, because again, it's not something that we've been taught, even though it's part of our body. And so really being like gentle with yourself and looking at like a gentle inquiry, maybe some deep breathing or caring for yourself before you try to teach this information to your child as well.
Yeah, I agree. And especially if there has been any trauma in your own life, it may be helpful to process this information first with a therapist before working it through with your kiddo. So, I wanted to ask you though, so in your book, you really emphasize that the body is sacred. And I just wanted to ask you, like, what does that concept mean to you personally? And how do you hope that naming it as sacred will empower your readers?
For me, that comes back to that sense of what are the unifying threads of love and compassion and harmony and grace that we experience in nature or religion, or spirituality. And then how is it that our body is a temple for that it is the space that light and those divine qualities can fill the body, and that the body is oriented towards that sense of connection, spirituality within, and how that then supports our health and wellness. And there's researcher Dr. Lisa Miller, who's a clinical psychologist and Columbia University professor, and she wrote this great book called The Spiritual Child. And she
I
talks a
read
lot.
that,
Have you
yes.
read that? It's so incredible. Yeah. And so she talks so much about the science and power of spirituality, and she explains this clear scientific link between spirituality and health, and shows that children who have a positive, active relationship to spirituality are less likely to use and abuse substances, less likely to be depressed, and less likely to have unprotected sex in the teen years, and that they have significantly higher markers for thriving, for an increased sense in meaning and purpose, and higher levels of academic success. And so they looked at, Dr. Miller and the researchers at Columbia University looked at structural MRIs, and they saw that people that have a sustained spiritual life, these regions of the brain that are associated with reflection and perception and orientation were thicker. And the same areas were thin in people that had reoccurring major depression. And so there's this strong evidence that spiritual life can be neuroprotective against depression. And spiritual life can be prayer, it can be meditation, it can be just connecting in with nature. And all of those awaken the same place in the brain. So she says there's one spiritual brain. And I just love that, as that was the evidence for what I wrote about in the book.
Yeah, I love it. And we'll link that book in the show notes too, so everyone can read it if they want to, but such a good one. I wanted to ask you also, like in what ways do you encourage parents and caregivers to use the lessons from the book to create healthier and more respectful relationships with their kids?
Yeah, I feel like being able to begin with ourselves, and it's not about adding to the to-do list, but for ourselves, like really bringing loving awareness to our thoughts and our feelings about our bodies, our health behaviors, and making an intention, like setting the compass in a particular direction of what particular part of health and wellness that we're focusing on as adults, and letting that intention really move and support our health behaviors, and anchoring and relaxing into a sense of health and wellness inside of ourselves, and letting that inspire our behaviors. And so I feel like that it's important to care for our health and wellness in the ways that then transmits, that we embody that, and how the ways that our children learn from our example. And then seeing which parts of these lessons that your children feel connected to, and then supporting them in those ways.
That's so good. That's so good. I feel like I just want to have a shout out. This is so random and like total ADHD moment, but shout out to rebranding Barbie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Mattel marketing team, because so glad. I don't know why that's been on my mind. I think it's because we keep talking about self love and body awareness. And I just feel like part of that is, you know, what as what as women or people who identify as women, like how do we interact with our world, with ourselves? What images are we seeing? And I guess maybe this is the connection that my brain is making. We don't want our kids to learn this stuff on the internet
Yeah.
because it may be very surprising what information they're receiving and in what way. And I know everyone out there is like, I monitor my kids. I will tell you, as a pediatrician who has been doing this for 17 years, if they want to access some funky stuff, there's always a way. I have seen shadow accounts. I have heard about the friend's friend, all the things. Yeah, just so important to receive the information in a way that's healthy for the brain versus potentially a little jarring, not neuroprotective for
Yeah.
lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So, how do you integrate the principles of self-love and kindness and respect into like everyday practices, that you advocate in your book?
Yeah, I actually asked my sons, we were discussing this. My boys are 19 and 21, and as I wrote this book for girls, I've checked in with them a lot. Like I gave you this same message, right? Like I told you this for boys, right? I hope I gave you this. And so, yeah, we've talked a lot about this, and so they've reflected that that I really supported their growth and development of their sense of their own worth and dignity, and really empowering who they are and letting them explore who they are and make space for creativity and sports. And when they acted up, which they most definitely did, I really tried to separate that sense of self-worth from the behavior, and to really try to discipline the behavior, but really honor their gifts and who they are. Um, and I always prioritized health and wellness, playing outside. And even when we didn't have a lot of money, I tried to make sure we ate fresh fruits and vegetables and great local meat. We would say gratitude and take a moment of silence or prayer. We took turns deciding what to do before dinner time, but always eating together and the ritual of that, and taking time to pray or have 3 deep breaths or whatever it was that week. And limiting screen time, which they fought about a lot, but I think that was so important. We'd have a TV in the house, and when they were younger, they had 2 hours of device time a week, an hour on Saturday and one on Sunday, and reading books before bedtime and doing calming breaths, sitting with them and talking about their emotions and what was coming up with them, and letting them be children. But also, I guess it comes back to really honoring the uniqueness of each one of them as a human being, and really trying to be present with them in this world of 10 million distractions. And you can't do that all the time, but I really tried to make time to really sit with them and look them in the eyes and like anchor in myself and give them that time that whatever they were sharing was the most important thing at that moment.
I love that so much. And while we're talking about your boys, it comes to my mind that actually this book is not just for girls. Because all people know body parts, because most people, not everyone, but most people do end up in some kind of relationship when they're older. And it's so helpful with supporting their partner or partners, to be able to know what's going on, right? So that we can help.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes. They both have a copy of the book.
good. That's so cute. I love that. I was hoping we just have about a minute left, but I was hoping you could share like a short experience about, maybe something memorable, like a memorable experience or feedback from like a family or an educator that kind of highlighted like the transformative impact of your work.
I think that people, my friends and family, witnessing me through this time, these years of having this idea about the book and thinking about the book and talking about the book.
Yeah.
And then about 5 years ago, I wrote the first page of the book, and internal gratitude for my husband for listening to me talk about this book all the time. So his listening, but also his witnessing. And I have an incredible group of girlfriends that I do yoga with or hike in the woods, and they're witnessing of this creative process and me trusting it, it was just like baby steps of like, this is what I want to write. Is this okay? This is what is coming through. And just them, yeah, everyone listening and supporting and being so kind and generous for many years.
I
And my
love
children
that.
as well.
I love that. You're almost
Yeah.
impacting the community at large and not just like people who are reading the book, which is so great. Well, I hope to see a series. Like I'm thinking book for boys, book for non people that identify as not having a gender, people who identify as non-binary. I'm like, let's do them all. Let's do all the books. And then maybe you can do the puberty books. I'm like, I need to put these in my office. So please write them.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes. So finally, so where can people find you and your work and your book? How do they get it?
Yes, absolutely. Right now, so Otterpine is the publisher. They're in Asheville, otterpine.com. And so you can go to their website and pre-order. And then after May 17th, that's the publication date, then it will be on Amazon and it will be in all the places. We're hoping it should be in Malaprops downtown, in many places in downtown Nashville. And on May 17th, I'm having a book launch party at Laughing Waters in Girton. And you're invited. And we're going to have speakers. Dr. Ellie is going to be part of the speakers. It's just going to be a sweet celebration of the book launch. And I'm super excited about that. So I guess I can share my website, juliasamaya.com, where I have more information about the book. And I'm working on an online series, a course series for parents to support them in teaching this material as well.
Oh, that's so amazing. Julia, thank you so much for
Yay.
being here. We're going to link
Thank you.
everything. You are wonderful. It's beautiful. My practice is middle path integrated pediatrics, and I practice in Asheville, North Carolina. So I treat kids 0 to 21 with holistic, natural, and also conventional healthcare. And I also do functional medicine for kiddos 2 to 102. So if you guys need that, then please reach out.